Hey everybody, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we're studying 1 Thessalonians chapter number 3. Let's go ahead and let's get started. Now, remember back where we were yesterday in 1 Thessalonians 2, where the people might have been struggling with Paul's motivations. Why is he trying to just love us and give us the gospel for free, and he's not taking?
So nice.
Yeah, why are you being so nice? And made them a little suspicious. Okay, so now try to put yourself in Paul's spot. He knew them for 3 weeks. A tiny church was born, and Paul had to move on because of intense persecution that kicked up. They had to get him out of town before somebody killed him. Okay, so pretty dramatic. So Paul's at a distance now, and he's worried about this church. So eventually, he sends his friend Timothy to go back there, like undercover, go back there and see how they're still doing, see if they kept the faith and if they're flourishing or what's going on. And come to find out, the way Paul loved them, they still love Paul. So it's like when you're dating. We were just laughing about this. It's like when you're newly dating somebody and you like them, but you're not sure if they like you at the same level that you like them. Eventually, you got to sit down and have that talk. You got to define the relationship.
Status of the relationship.
That's it. So what are we? Are we, so Paul goes, oh, listen, in chapter 2, he told them how much he loves them. Now in chapter 3, he figures out how much they love him. And so everybody's happy, all right? So now he's writing to them because their faith is starting to bring some consequences. So they're starting to go through tribulation and persecution. You can see in verse 7, he says, "Therefore, brethren, in all of our affliction and distress, we were comforted and comforted concerning you by your faith." And he goes on to talk about what they have struggled with in their persecution. Listen, when Paul talks about persecution, he's not talking about it like somebody removed, like sitting in an ivory tower and just watching everybody else. He doesn't have book knowledge of affliction and tribulation. He talks about it like a man who is very well acquainted with it, because he is, okay? So when he's telling them this, basically, he's saying as soon as you start following Jesus, trouble's going to start following you. That's the way it works out here. My favorite part to this chapter, though, came with Paul's prayers. So if you look at verses 11 through 13, toward the end of this chapter, Paul really is praying 4 prayers. Number 1, that God would let them fellowship together face to face. Paul wanted to see them. They wanted to see Paul. Paul's praying for a reunion. All right. Number 2, for their spiritual growth, and that the love they have for one another would be the evidence of their growth. By the way, if you think you're growing but you're not loving, then you're not growing, because growing always produces loving. All right. Third thing he prayed for their unity. He says to one another. So love and unity go hand in hand. And by the way, the reason Paul's praying for love and unity, if he wouldn't have to pray for it if it were automatically given or if it were easy. He's praying for it because those things they can be hard to get. And then the fourth thing, he's praying for their holiness. And the reason he's praying for their holiness, he says, because we're all going to stand before Jesus soon. And we want to make sure that he's going to be pleased and glorified by what we've done here. What'd you get?
So what I see about God in this chapter, and it's a little different from what we talked about, because as you're reading, I kind of started thinking some more, is that God is so trustworthy. As we look at Paul's ministry, and it's not just this church in Thessalonica, he was able to be with them for 3 weeks, and then he had to flee for his own protection and safety. And I wonder if he was thinking, man, it didn't work out the way it should have. Like, I just needed a little more time there. How's God going to use that, when not only did obviously that 3 weeks with them was the kicking off point that these people needed, and then the Lord sustained them and took care of all of it, but also we get these letters that are impacting our lives today that we would not have had he got to stay with them, because you don't need to write a letter to them if you're already with them.
That's right.
And so as ministry people or people who follow God, a lot of times as we walk this road following God, things may not look the way we think they should. Things may not, turn out the way we think they should, or we may, invest in someone or a group of people and think, man, I just needed a little more time, or, what in the world? But I am so reminded of God's character that he is trustworthy and he has a plan and he wants relationship with those people even more than we do. And so I see that God is so trustworthy. We can trust him for that, and we can trust him to do all of the work for us. In that prayer that Dusty was just talking about at the end, I love that he's praying for love. He's praying for unity. He's praying for holiness for all these people. And that's because we have to rely upon God to do those things. We can't work that out in ourselves. We cannot be good enough. We cannot be holy enough. We cannot love without God. It is God who does that work. And so in all of this chapter, I just see that we can trust in God. If our focus is on God, he takes care of all those little details, all of those little control issues that we might have.
That's right. Think about how easy, think about how easy it would have been for Paul if he were able to go into every city, and every city would have been cookie cutter. Okay? Think about what that would have done. It would have just become like machinery. Just go in, you do step 1, 2, and 3, perfect, step 1, 2, and 3, and you just kind of keep going. One of the beautiful pieces about this is God is a creative God. Go back to Genesis. He's very creative.
Look at your belly button. Look at He's creative.
Oh, okay, all right.
He made us.
I didn't understand why you wanted me to look at my belly button.
No, don't.
Okay. Not on the video anyway.
No.
All right. So what if God said, hey, look, don't get too comfortable, because I like to do new works and I like to keep you relying on me. And you just trust me, I'm going to make it all work out. And that may be a good lesson for us to end with today.
Yeah.
Let's just trust him and he will make it all work out. And let's live with obedience and faith, because we're going to all see Jesus soon. And we want him to be pleased and glorified with what he sees in our lives. We'll see you tomorrow. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. All right? Bye.
Bye.